Is this the year that you finally break through and buy your very first self-storage facility? Well, I'm going to reveal the answer to that question here today, and I'm also going to share with you something that I have been working on for well over 6 months. I'm super pumped to bring you into it and to share it with you. I think it's going to have a massive, massive impact on your storage goals and overall your success. But you're gonna have to stick with me here, okay? Now, my name is Alex Pardo. I am a self-storage owner, operator, and coach, and I also lead and coach a group of storage winners in a community we call Storage Wins. And these are people that are like-minded, that support each other, hold each other accountable. In some cases, they're knocking on the door of their first deal. In other cases, they're on to their second, third, even their fourth storage deal. And I wanna bring you inside to one of our community calls and just share with you the power and the value that was delivered on that call. And really my goal and aim is to share that value with you because I want nothing more than to help you succeed. That is the reason I host a Storage Wins podcast, YouTube videos, and all my content that I put out there. It's to help you accomplish and buy your very first storage facility. Now, about 3 weeks ago, I hosted a holiday reset call. And every single week, I lead and facilitate our Storage Wins group community coaching calls. And this is where we get together on Zoom, and they're very interactive. They're collaborative. It's not a passive learning environment. And I walked our community members through several exercises to help them reflect on 2025, help them extract all the good that came from it, also help them to realize the challenges and the lessons learned and how that can fuel their success heading into 2026 and beyond. And so I took them through several exercises. And then the following week, what we did was we did something we call our Mastermind Maximizer. Okay, our Mastermind Maximizer. And this is where we coach each other. And people have the opportunity to coach others, to reflect back to them, to share. And then we come back into the main room, so to speak, and we crowdsource all the wisdom, the nuggets to share so that everybody benefits from it. It's such a powerful thing that we do inside of our community. And then after that community, what we do is everybody inside of our private online school community, everybody shares their top 3 insights, nuggets, or takeaways. And so what I thought I would do is as I reflect on the nuggets that are shared after every single one of our calls, and we're talking 15, 20, 30 comments deep, I want to go ahead and just share some of those valuable nuggets with you, because again, if one of these things, if you take it to heart, you implement and you execute, you're going to be one step closer to buying your very first storage facility. So I think if I was going to summarize a lot of the nuggets that people shared, the insights, the breakthroughs people had, it had, number one, it had to do with how they can prioritize their time, right? So for me, I always tell people that struggle with time, that say, hey, I don't have time. Well, look, we all have 24 hours in a day, right? I mean, that's the most obvious thing you've probably heard so far this year. But what I find is that it's not a function of time management. It's a function of priority management, right? And because we all have 24, whether it's Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or me or you or anybody else, it's what we do with that time. And so it's a function of priority. How much of a priority is buying your first or your next self-storage facility, okay? And so I shared some best practices, and as a community, we mastermind around best practices to take away so that you know that you're focused on the revenue generating activities. Your energy and your attention and focus is on the things that are actually going to progress and move you towards your first deal, not the things that make you feel like you're making progress, but it's just kind of busy work. The second thing was people get stuck when it comes to having meaningful conversations with storage owners, right? In some cases, cold calling. And so we talked about that. We talked about the importance of being very strategic, very intentional, being focused on the right activities, like I just mentioned. And then we also spent a lot of time talking about, is the juice worth the squeeze based on your particular goals, based on your vision, based on what you're looking to accomplish. So now that you kind of understand big picture where just some of the conversations were happening, I want to start to zoom in. And as I scan through a lot of the comments here inside of our private Storage Wins community, I'm just going to go ahead and pick a few and then I'm going to riff on them. Okay. Something that I think I've done once or twice before that I've gotten really good feedback, but this is going to be very much shooting from the hip. I'm going to read something to you and then I'm going to reflect back on it. I'm going to share with you my perspective on it in an effort that it can help you depending or regardless, I should say, of where you are in your journey. So one of our members said, hey, the biggest takeaway from today was to take massive imperfect action, get in the reps, otherwise known as the repetitions, practice things we feel we're not good at, pick up the phone and dial, carve out the time and be consistent. He said, I'm committing to make more cold calls to storage facilities. It helps me get back to the basics and stay in the trenches with other storage facilities. And there's no growth in the comfort zone. Now, for context, this is a gentleman, his name is Casey. He has bought 3 storage facilities. In fact, he came into our community and bought his first deal in 91 days, his second one 6 months after that, his third one 2 months after that. So he already owns self-storage facility, but he was in the process of selling another business and he's kind of gotten away from a lot of the things that helped him achieve that first, second, and third goal. And sometimes it really is going back to the basics. A good friend of mine, Joe McCall, always says you got to be brilliant at the basics. And people tend to overcomplicate this business. But again, if I was going to simplify it, I would say it comes down to connections and conversations, right? Because conversions happen inside of conversations. And when that happens, it leads to contracts, cash, and cash flow. So you have to have meaningful dialogue, what we call meaningful conversations. Number 2 is you got to get really good at analyzing deals. And the way that you get good is by putting in those reps that Casey was talking about. It's the repetitions on a daily basis. We hold our community members accountable to underwrite at least one, if not 2 or 3 storage facilities every single day. And then you got to pick up the bat, swing, and you got to make the offer. Every single week, you should be making offers. And so that was Casey's reflection. And I want to go into another one of our members who recently joined, probably like within the last month and a half, 2 months. And she shared I got to have more clear priorities, daily, weekly, monthly, to ensure that time is being properly allocated towards achieving the goals that I say I want. And she went on to share how she sees how the power of building relationships inside of the community, how that leads to not just more knowledge, but it opens up doors and opportunities because she's seen a lot of our members joint venture, collaborate, help each other, support each other. And then that just breeds confidence. And then the third thing she shared, and this is something that I want to spend some time talking about because I think it was a big breakthrough for her. In fact, so we broke out into small breakout rooms, like mastermind rooms. I happened to be in her room and she was sharing, she's like, Alex, it's really difficult for me to cold call. She's like, I've done it before. I know I can do it. I just really don't like it. And I started quickly realizing that there's a lot of resistance to cold calling for her. Now, for you, there could be resistance to something else. But as I started to ask her questions and started to really unpack the root cause, what it boiled down to was a lack of confidence. She was concerned and afraid that storage owners were going to ask her questions that she didn't feel equipped to answer. And so one of the benefits of being a part of a community and having a coach is that you can borrow their credibility and confidence. And sometimes I have to inject a heavy dose of confidence into people because they don't think they can do something that I know with certainty they can do. And sometimes it takes somebody reflecting back and sharing with you, hey, you are more than capable and very able and willing to be able to have these conversations and connect with people. And I think in her mind, she's created a story about what technical questions a storage owner is going to ask her. When I know that 99.9% of the time, a storage owner is not going to ask her questions that are going to stumble her or make her trip. And I even shared with her, like, even if you did get something, just be honest. Let the seller know, hey, listen, that's a great question. I don't have the answer to that right now. I'm actually looking to buy my first facility and I'm supported. I have a coach. I have a great community of people that do own and operate self-storage facilities. So I have the right guidance here and I'll get you that answer. So I always tell people, and this is one of the things I shared with her and with our small group, is acting as if is some of the worst advice possible. Don't act as if. You can still be authentic, be genuine, be yourself, and still communicate and convey confidence. And she walked out of that call not only with a huge shot of confidence that she didn't have before, but I released a pressure valve and I said, hey, listen, why don't we just take some pressure off of your shoulders here? I said, if there's a lot of friction and resistance when it comes to cold calling, I told her, I said, I can work with you on that. I can help you get past that. And I want to continue to do that. But in the meantime, let's pick the path of least resistance. Cold calling is just one way that you can have meaningful conversations, dialogue, and connect and build relationships with mom and pop storage owners. And I outlined at least a handful of other strategies that she can go out to connect with storage owners, many of which I've shared in my YouTube channel and the Storage Wins podcast. But I said, what resonates and aligns most with your personality and what feels like it has a lot less resistance? And she quickly identified two strategies that she said, hey, I can lean into that. And she walked out of that call with a smile, a renewed sense of confidence that she didn't have prior. And now she's putting in that consistent daily action. And that's what I always tell people is we cannot control if we buy a storage facility. However, what we can control, our thoughts, our actions, our mindsets, the things that we commit to, our daily activities, the weekly activities, the monthly activities. And when you stack those things consistently, and that is the key, it's the right activities done consistently, you will put yourself in a position to accomplish and achieve that storage win, i.e. buying your first storage facility. So what she shared was, hey, don't force yourself on the path of least resistance, but don't completely shy away from discomfort either. Take small steps daily. And so I didn't want to just give her the hall pass per se to like never cold call, because I think growth happens when you put yourself in a position that makes you feel uncomfortable, awkward, shy. That's an indication that there's something that you need to lean into there. And at the same time, I also don't want her to continue to kick the can down the road and then not connect with people because she thinks this is the only way. Right. So what I was able to do was she had a very like narrow view of how she needed to approach this. And I just gave her a new lens that expanded and gave her different options and ways to connect with storage owners. I had another member who just joined, and within a couple of days of joining, he was already on the phone with sellers and sent his first offer in the first week. And his biggest takeaways, he was very straightforward, succinct, and to the point. He said, be strategic, be intentional, stay consistently focused on the process until you achieve your goal. And that's so important. I see so many people get into this business like wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, and with like a lot of enthusiasm and energy. And then a month or two into it, when success hasn't been knocking at their door, they kind of like lose a little bit of that energy and momentum. And they realize that, hey, this is a little bit of a process. And it doesn't necessarily have to be such a process. There's a lot of different ways that we can do this. I mean, we have one member in our community that is part owner of multiple facilities, and it's because he's had capital to be able to inject into these deals. But there's a lot of different ways you can do this. And I think that's just one of the benefits of surrounding yourself with other like-minded individuals, some of which already own storage, some are actively pursuing it. Just a lot of opportunities tend to present themselves when you immerse yourself in that environment. I had another member who, again, recently knew within the last 30 days, he said, number one, keep your calls relaxed. It's just a conversation with another person. It's not a sales pitch. And I want to elaborate there because he was going into this, putting all this pressure on himself and thinking as if this was going to be some big sales pitch. And I said, brother, you're just a one person talking to another. Okay. Take the pressure off. Like, they put on your pants one leg at a time, just like you. They just happen to own storage. And so whenever I call mom and pop storage owners, I don't feel any pressure because I'm not trying to sell them anything. I'm not trying to take their money. In fact, I would even say, if you want to be technical about it, and I'm not doing this in the first call, but I'm actually trying to give them money. Okay, but not even really, because I'm not trying to buy the facility in the first call. I'm merely looking to connect with that person to see if they potentially are a match. What do I mean by that? I just want to see if they raise their hand even slightly and would consider an offer or would consider a conversation about selling their facility. And so when you approach it with that mindset, it just tends to like take some of the pressure off. Too many people like create stories in their mind about what this is going to feel like, what questions are they going to ask. And I genuinely feel no angst or worry about calling another storage owner. Now, I also recognize that when I first started, I probably felt a little more angst than I do now, even though I really wasn't too nervous about it. But I never put pressure on myself because I wasn't trying to buy their facility. I wasn't trying to sell them anything. I wasn't trying to get anything from them. I was just calling them and asking them. I was being myself. I was being genuine, authentic. And I was just asking them like, hey, have you ever thought about selling? Would you consider selling? Okay, so take the pressure off. The second thing that he shared was to focus on the daily actions that can move you closer to owning a storage facility. And that's one of the things that I was able to help him and some of our newer members do, is to simplify the process to just step 1, 2, and step 3. Don't worry about step 4, 5, and 6, but just what are the things that you need to focus on this week, next week, the following week, and the fourth week. And then we just build from there. And then a big topic of conversation was how we need to sharpen the axe before we start swinging it at the tree. And what I mean by that is there was one of our members who already owns a storage facility, but he's been kind of struggling to find his next one. And I realized in the course of the conversation, as he was sharing some of the challenges, was that he doesn't know what he needs to focus on when he wakes up in the morning. And I said, hey, man, what I want you to do is every Saturday or Sunday, pick a day in the weekend. I want you to carve out half an hour at most and plan out the week. Okay, start with intentionality. What is the intention you have for that week? And then map out what you need to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And those activities need to be aligned with the storage goal. Okay, make sure that the things that you are spending your time and energy on are the actual needle movers. And then what I like to do is the night before or the day before, I look at the next day's activities, and think of it like a reconfirmation. Hey, do I need to tweak, modify, or adjust anything? Or do I keep it as is and just stay the course? And all I got to do is focus on executing. And there's a book, I think it's called like Eat the Frog, right? And so many people avoid the very thing they need to do, and they put it off until the end of the day. And then the end of the day comes, they get complicated, and guess what happens? It just gets kicked, the can gets kicked down the road. It gets pushed off to the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And there's a saying in our community that I've been quoting recently. It's the magic you want is in the work you're avoiding. The magic you want is in the work you're avoiding. So what is that thing that deep down in your gut and your belly, you know you need to do? You've been wanting to do it, but maybe it's just been fear that has been holding you back. Maybe you just haven't mustered up the confidence, or it's a lack of courage at this stage. Let me be the one to tell you that you can absolutely do this. Lean into the very thing that makes you feel uncomfortable, because chances are that is the breakthrough that you need to experience to have the growth and accomplish your goals. Now, it might not happen overnight. In fact, I can tell you it probably won't, but done consistently over time, the right activities, and my experience tells me that you are well on your way to your first or even your next storage win. So there are several more things. In fact, I want to go ahead and start to put a bow on this particular one, because I want to keep this jam-packed with, if you could just take one nugget, one insight that some of our storage winners shared, and implement it into your business, into whatever situation you find yourself in right now. Massive imperfect action, speed of implementation. These are the things that separate those that succeed from those that are just kind of like on that hamster wheel or are failing to find success, right? But I want to go ahead and, before I share with you a big announcement, and I'm not going to reveal too much because I'm going to need you to plug into the next one. We cannot control if we buy a storage facility. What can we control? What we think about, our activities, what we decide to do, how intentional we are, what we focus on, eliminating distractions, setting our work environment up for success. So sometimes you got to take a step back, sharpen the axe before you pick it up and start swinging it. Okay. Now, with that being said, here's how I'm going to put a bow on this episode. For well over 6 months, I have been working on season 2 of the Storage Wins podcast. Now, season 1 is coming to an end pretty soon here. And I need you to stay plugged in to YouTube podcasts so that you know when season 2 is going to get launched. I'll probably be revealing that in the next week or two. But something that I've been working on that I personally have not seen in our space. In fact, I don't know that I've seen it in real estate, but I think you're going to find it very, very, very interesting. And I think it's going to help you in a big, big way. So with that being said, I'm not going to reveal too much. I need you to make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, wherever you're consuming the podcast, whether it's on Apple or Spotify or some of the other platforms. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Share this episode with somebody that you think might benefit. And if you want to have a conversation about our Storage Wins community and how we can help you buy your very first self-storage facility here in 2026, I encourage you to reach out, head over to storagewins.com. And with that being said, I'm really looking forward to connecting with you on the next one.